Hello, my name is Linda Comeau, and welcome to Constellation Conference interviews with our presenters. I'm so excited today. I have Judy Wallace with me, and she's going to be a presenter at our conference coming up in Virginia Beach, October 5th to 8th. Please see our website for more information, nasconstellations.org. Our theme of the year is Bridging the Divide, Healing the Personal and Collective Soul. And which is so exciting because Judy's topic is Sacred Scaffolding for Collective Healing.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Linda. It's great to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to interview you. This conference is going to be interesting because there's a multitude of tracks that you can follow quite easily. So with your section being on collective healing, this is very exciting to have such an opportunity to talk with you. Tell us a little bit about your segment.
Well, and first I want to just preface and say I was really thrilled to see the theme for this conference, Bridging the Divide, Healing the Personal and Collective Soul, because in my experience in working with collective healing kinds of constellations, there's a reciprocity going on there. And so when we work with the individual soul, it ripples into the larger systemic collective, and also on the collective level. If you think across generations, across time, across space, all that's happened, and to work at that level, it can filter in all kinds of ways that we may never know. So I find that really fascinating. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
So yeah, in my session, we'll do a lot of things. It's a 2.5-hour session, and that's so that there's time to really, truly experience, not just hear me speak, but experience kind of how to, and everybody might have their own way to do this, but how to build a sacred kind of scaffolding that activates the field. And creates a sacred space that feels safe and intimate, and people trust and can actually step into the field from that place, stepping out of who they are to truly represent some often very large energies in working with the larger systems. I've done various ones around healing our history with Native peoples, or working with looking institutionally at the United States government and what is going on. Where is the potential? Where is the system trying to move, and how might we begin to catalyze that? So I don't know if you'd like, yeah?
No, definitely. That's what I was going to say. Give us a little example, please.
Okay. Yeah, what I normally do is invite the group in to sit in circle. And, it depends on the size of the group, maybe 2 concentric circles, but to sit in circle in kind of sacred space and enter into silence. I find that silence shifts energy from all the rushing to get there or whatever. And I don't often see this done in the constellations I've been part of. And then I will maybe do a couple of kinds of questions using a talking piece that I bring with me. Here's one I use often, so that it keeps the conversation slow, and invite each as they feel ready to begin to acknowledge and feel the presence of their support, how they're being resourced, be it their ancestors, their teachers, their friends, spiritual, inspirational people, animals, the land, whatever that is. And each one then might say and give a short story about that. And so I feel the field beginning to build itself, and it feels rich, and they feel the presence of others who are supporting us, like a supporting circle around us in the work that we're doing. Yeah, so that's one example.
That's a lovely example.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so build on that then now with your talk.
Yeah, what I would do next is maybe we might take a break there. It depends on the timing and how long that particular circle or a couple of circle conversations takes. But already the field is becoming stimulated, and I'm noticing things because there's always a theme for the constellation, because we will actually then move into constellation. And so I might, just remind them a little bit about that. I know that often you ask people, what do you say to people who are first timers, or who don't know anything about constellation? And for the most part, I've had quite a few first timers, but people who've done a lot of really spiritual work. So it's not so new and different to them. But one kind of way I like to think about it is that constellation, especially for people who really care about social change and social justice, can be like a subtle form of activism. So we can step in and begin to embody, almost like acupuncture needles, finding that place, that meridian, that place to stand, at least in the beginning, until something begins to reveal itself in the movement or how one uses their bodily sensing. It's a very embodied experience. I also like to get people really grounded in the initial circle process.
Right.
So, and that they step out of who they are as Judy or Linda or whoever, and step into whatever they're representing. I might also, as part of the process, because we'll do a constellation there. It depends on my sensing. What I find with these constellations, where we're looking at larger topics, like racism, and then maybe representing something that's part of that, people may have a already preconceived notion of what that is. I don't know that that happens so much in family constellation, because we may be representing a mother or father we have no idea about. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we have ideas about the media or, the presidency. I usually don't name a specific person, but it seems to be there anyway. So I might also do at least some of the elements blind, so that they don't necessarily know who they are.
Oh, wonderful.
And it can be quite powerful, because I think one of the key aspects is, number one, a level of authenticity that may not always be possible from our preconceived lens. And number two, the element of shadow. Sometimes I might put in an element, and I can give you an example if you like.
I'd love it.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going to happen with this. So, I'll briefly describe a constellation I did not very long ago. And the question, here's an example of a question. Let me just see if I can find it. The question for this constellation or theme was around the government, the U.S. government, and how are our current U.S. government institutions possibly reflections or not of their ancestral roots. And I also asked, how might they be part, these institutions, of the American identity in the process of trying to change or realize its full potential? So I always kind of look at where it could go in a kind of hopeful, full of potential way, knowing that all kinds of other stuff can show up. So in this particular one, I had asked for representatives, and this was not blind, this part, for the presidency of the United States, the Congress, and the judiciary. Because everybody talks about these as the three branches of government. And they've been there since the Constitution. And they check and balance on each other. And this is like written in concrete almost, that these are sacred. And then I asked someone to be the future potential. And the three institutions, if you will, of government were just kind of there, and they could kind of describe who they were, and they were solid and stable and that kind of thing. The future potential couldn't find her place. There didn't seem to be any way that anything was resonating to her. And so I thought, there's something missing here. So I wrote it on a piece of paper and gave it to another woman to step in and to find her place. And she would put it in her pocket. And so she came into the constellation slowly. And I often encourage that, but she did it slowly anyway. And went right to the middle of where these were. And they weren't in a full circle, but they were in a kind of at least semicircle or a little bit more. She went right to the middle. And she was looking out in the other direction, not at any of them.
Right.
And I asked her, how it was to be there. And she said, well, it's not easy to be here. But this is where I belong. And I'm going to stay here. So basically, she wasn't really liking being there, but that was where she needed to be. And some other things, there were some exchanges, and the rest of them were kind of like, so what? This is just, she's just in the way. Congress especially said, she's blocking what we're trying to get done. We got a lot of work to do, and we're always paralyzed. So anyway, so after some other exchanges, and I won't go through it all, I asked her to show who she was. She was slavery.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was just like dropping a bomb in the middle of this constellation. They were all like, oh my God. And didn't quite know what to do. And, it's like what has always been there, but hasn't been seen or acknowledged. And, I've read some history recently by Howard Zinn, who really goes back into the true history of the coming of being of the United States of America. There were 20 African slaves brought in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. So before the Constitution or these three branches of government ever existed. And it's been an economic foundation. I had thought of putting in the economic system as well, because people, other representatives kind of saw the relationship. Anyway, slavery said, I wonder what it would be like if I weren't here. So after some back and forth, I let her step out, and she went to the side, on the other side, away from them, looking in a little bit, but not much. And they were lost. It was like a hole, a vacuum in the middle of the whole system.
Wow.
They were paralyzed. So, and there was a little bit more to it, but not a lot, because what could be seen there was incredible. And that this has been like all the other institutions there all along, but not acknowledged, not seen, not worked with, not dealt with. And it's still here, and the residue from that, and all the problems in the country around racism. Yeah.
Fascinating.
So I saw there where the blind, representative it can be a total catalyst for huge awareness. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, that was powerful. I was moved.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure everyone was. Fascinating. Yeah, blind constellations can be quite opening, and the shadow aspect of that one. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, wow, Judy, you kind of stunned me. I don't know what else to ask you. Although I did write something down. Forming powerful questions is part of one of the things I noted in your description. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I kind of sense, and I spend some meditative time, in the 2 or 3 days before a constellation, sensing into what the theme needs to be given the energy that's at work in the larger field And of course, in the current political environment in the United States, there's no lack of themes, but there could be other things rising up. Climate change came to the surface one day simply because of our president taking the United States out of the Paris Accord. So a constellation was done on that. So the question then is something that catalyzes the field and is like an intention, but to move it toward some kind of positive outcome, not necessarily resolution, like in the example I gave you, but some huge new awareness, maybe even. I personally like to use questions that begin with how, because there's some kind of movement there. What can take us more here.
Yes.
And I always encourage people in constellations to be sensing, doing their bodily sensing, their feelings. And yes, it will be interpreted here, but not simply coming from the mind.
Right.
So that's why I avoid the what questions. It could also be a why, might be a where, but I've found the how to be the most powerful. Yeah, and then I work around the theme, whatever it is. Like another example I have, early on I did a constellation, it was really during the time of Standing Rock. And when that was at its full kind of potential, just galvanizing people across the world. And that was last November, I believe, or somewhere in that time frame. So I felt that was a theme. And so the theme was around healing our history with Native peoples. So I developed the question, how might healing our deep wounds with the Native peoples open the way for a more life-affirming future?
Lovely.
And it was an amazing constellation. So I think it kind of begins to move that energy in the direction. And I also, I can sense into that. And each one of us can, as facilitators or hosting some kind of process, what is really present in this field that wants to be looked at? And how might I set that intention so that it activates the field?
Oh my gosh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm.
That's a really excellent explanation. Yeah, that's fascinating. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Well, I think your workshop's going to be well attended.
I don't know. We'll see.
I think more and more people are interested in getting beyond as we constellators grow in ourselves and become aware of the political and environmental and economical, etc., components of our societies. Yes, I think there's interest there, and we're all little mini activists, even just being constellators, frankly.
Yes.
we're out there shaking the trees.
That's right, absolutely. And that's why I think some social activists and more are being drawn to constellation.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because this gives not just potential, but sort of like you mentioned earlier, a groundness, a scaffolding to stand upon.
Right.
Build with.
Yes.
And you can explain through a constellation a lot more quickly compared to trying to educate your followers or people at large.
It can take months or years.
Yes, exactly. But you get somebody in a constellation representing and feeling their body for maybe the first time in some time with information. That's stunning.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, wow, this is so cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Oh, thank you. I want to mention everyone for more information to look on our website, nasconstellations.org. Our theme is Bridging the Divide, Healing the Personal and Collective Soul, and Judy's workshop will be excellent food for thought if you can attend. So again, thank you, Judy. We'll be talking to you at the conference, if not before.
Yes.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye.